Morning Indiana, working for you.
The time right now is 4:27. Here it is Monday morning, June 1st. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Indiana. Several things to talk about before we get into our show this morning, starting with something that's going on right now, and that's a curfew that's in effect right now in Marion County. Mayor Joe Hogsett issuing a curfew. It started last night around 8 p.m. It will last through 6 a.m. this morning. This is due to safety concerns after a few nights of protests that remained peaceful for many hours. Eventually turned into violent riots. We had damaged buildings, glass shattered, and even some people hurt as protesters and police clashed over race relations. This is all in response to George Floyd in Minneapolis being killed by a police officer there, and we know riots have broke out across the country, and so even here in Indianapolis we're seeing the effects of that. So the mayor's saying they're not able to, they're not sure if they'd be able to keep people safe, so that's why they installed that curfew, and we know that there are several arrests made overnight. We're going to break down those numbers coming up here on Good Morning Indiana. Something else we're going to be talking about today is the cleanup effort. A lot of this happened over the weekend during the daytime hours. Volunteers, business owners coming out to sweep up shattered glass, board up broken windows, and assess the damage from what was left behind after those protests turned violent. In the overnight hours, you can see people cleaning up spray paint and graffiti on some of our monuments and some of our buildings downtown. So we're going to take a look at the cleanup efforts and what this means for business owners. A lot of them trying to rebound from the coronavirus pandemic. So we're going to look at what this means for them. We do want to take a turn right now to our forecast. And Todd, if there was kind of a bright spot in what happened here in Indianapolis and central Indiana over the weekend, it was the weather. It was absolutely gorgeous out there.
Yeah, you know, Saturday and Sunday, the humidity was low. We had the sunshine, Lauren, and temperatures very comfortable in the 70s. And we're going to carry that over here now into your Monday forecast. That is the good news, as the humidity is still comfortable. We are still dealing with temperatures in the 40s and 50s here this morning. Logansport at 48 degrees, right at 50 degrees in Bloomington, as well as Muncie. It was great sleeping weather. And skies will be mostly sunny here throughout the day today. As I mentioned, the humidity, that remains low. What you see on your screen there on radar near Muncie, that's just some feedback. There's no rain there. But changes are coming, and we're going to bring back the heat. We're going to bring back the humidity as well. So you really need to kind of soak in this last day of this very comfortable air mass that we are in. With the heat and humidity coming back, will come the chance of storms as well. We'll talk all about it coming up in your Storm Team 6 forecast.
All right, Todd, thanks so much. Something else we have to talk about today is the coronavirus pandemic. That's still going on, and we know Marion County plans to move to stage 3 today. So we'll break down what that means for you. Plus the latest numbers, like 9 more deaths here reported in the state and more than 300 new cases, about a 13% positivity rate. So what that all means, that is coming up here on Good Morning Indiana.
This is Good Morning Indiana, working for you.
Those people who are downtown, I'm asking you, please go home. Go home for yourself. Go home for your family. Go home for your city. Go home for your cause.
Marion County under a curfew this morning after multiple nights of violence following peaceful protests. Now at 4:30 on Good Morning Indiana, what the order means and what is next for the city. Plus, faith leaders in Indianapolis coming together to deliver a list of demands to the mayor and other government leaders. Working for you this morning, we're breaking down the change they want to see in Indianapolis.
They have not just caused chaos and damage. They are hijacking a moment and a movement and changing the conversation.
Leaders across the country condemning looters and rioters as protests continue to grow across the country over the death of George Floyd. Their plea to put a stop to the violence. But again, it is 4:30 here on Good Morning Indiana. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Casey. Todd Clausen and I still social distancing. He's reporting from his home basement. Todd, and what can we expect as we start a brand new work week?
You know, more of the same, Lauren. Temperatures were very comfortable over the weekend. Some people I even heard say, oh, it's a little cool on Sunday, especially with the breeze. But if you were in the sunshine, it was great. And today we're going to keep the sunshine, and we're going to warm it up a couple more degrees here than what we saw yesterday for your high temperature. Hope you gave your air conditioners a break. Open up the windows here throughout the overnight hours. And look at these temperatures. A lot of 40s out there this morning, from Greencastle to Crawfordsville over to Richmond, sitting at 54 in Indy right now. And the satellite radar picture is completely clear right now across Indiana. We'll wake to nothing but sunshine all across the area. But back off to our west, you notice the clouds, you notice some storms, and that is going to signify a change that is going to be heading our way as we work our way into the coming days. And that is going to be the return of not only the rain that you see, but also the heat and humidity. So get out there, enjoy today. 54 at 8 a.m., up to 69 already by the time we get to the noon hour with high temperatures this afternoon. That'll be right around 75 degrees. We're talking close to 90 by midweek. That's why you need to enjoy today. More on the extended forecast coming up in just a little bit.
All right, Todd, thank you so much. We want to recap the curfew order that's in effect right now. Mayor Joe Hogsett signing an executive order imposing a curfew for Marion County from Sunday night at 8 p.m. until this morning at 6 a.m. Anyone who is not an essential worker could be arrested and fined if you are out. This came after riots and looting broke out Friday and Saturday night after peaceful protests over the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Drayshawn Reed ended. The mayor says that the damage done across the city made it clear that law enforcement could no longer provide protection for the protesters, business owners, or the residents. At least 27 people were arrested, 5 police cars were damaged, and 3 officers and 3 protesters were injured on Friday night. By Sunday morning, at least 2 people were killed in shootings downtown, and 29 people were arrested.
These actions are necessary, but they break my heart. They break my heart because I know that by taking these necessary steps, we are perpetuating a narrative that places the violent acts of last night on a pedestal, diminishing the power of activism that has understandably been sparked by the visceral reminders of injustice our nation has experienced in recent weeks.
Again, the current curfew is in effect until 6 o'clock this morning. Those who violate the order could be arrested or fined up to $10,000. Mayor Joe Hogsett says this is not a punishment, but instead it is for the city's protection. Meanwhile, religious leaders in Indianapolis are calling on Mayor Hogsett to set a national example and implement what they are calling long overdue police reform. At the State House on Sunday, people from all different denominations and religious groups joined together on the steps of the State House. They laid out a list of demands called the Live Free Reform Agenda, and that includes a higher standard of training for police officers.
We've come here today because we must act now. The mayor, the city council, the government officials must understand that we will not continue to deal with police brutality from the people that have been hired to protect themselves.
The group then marched to the city-county building where they held a die-in, laying on the ground for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while the names of those shot and killed by police were read out loud. The time symbolized the amount of time that George Floyd had an officer's knee on his neck before he died. You can see the group's full list of demands on the IndyChannel.com. Business owners spent another day cleaning up Sunday after windows were broken and stores vandalized. But there was a welcome surprise when community members showed up to help clean up the mess. Volunteers we spoke to say it's not what side you're on. They say it's all about working together, and this is not a black or white issue. It's everyone's responsibility.
Our city, somebody got to clean it up.
I saw the monument was painted on a live stream this morning, and I felt that is disrespectful to the servicemen who died fighting for everyone's rights.
Volunteers also told us that they stand with the protesters, but they don't agree with the violence or the vandalism. This morning, the country is picking up the pieces after another night of nationwide unrest. ABC's Inez de la Cotera has the very latest from Washington.
Overnight, more protests from coast to coast. From Los Angeles to Boston, large crowds protesting into the night. A dramatic scene unfolding in Minneapolis. This tanker truck driving onto a closed highway, barreling towards crowds of peaceful protesters.
It's been awesome seeing the community come out, taking a moment of silence for George Floyd. And you just see a semi-truck come barreling through, trying to kill people. And I don't understand.
New York seeing mostly peaceful protests, even as police announced nearly 800 arrests over the weekend.
There are instigators that are erupting in this violence, and it reflects on black people.
In L.A., police firing tear gas to scatter looters, while in Miami, protesters themselves took care of that, with many forming a human chain to protect a CVS when others tried to break into the store. In Washington, D.C., protesters setting a large fire just blocks from the White House and shouting, "You are the threat," to police in riot gear. President Trump remaining mostly out of sight on Sunday, except on Twitter. Critics claim the president is adding fuel to the fire, calling for law and order and saying the Secret Service was ready, if needed, to take on protesters with vicious dogs and ominous weapons. George Floyd's brother with this message.
You could be angry. You could be frustrated, but channel it in another way where justice will be served.
And the officer seen with his knee on Floyd's neck was set to appear in court today. That date has now been pushed back to June 8th after he was transferred to state prison. Inez de la Cotera, ABC News, Washington.
The time right now is 4:37. Target is temporarily closing several stores and adjusting hours at dozens more. In a statement Sunday, the retailer said that the move is a safety measure due to ongoing protests. Looters ransacked a Target in Minneapolis and demonstrators vandalized 2 locations in Atlanta. IMPD officers tell us that a group also tried to loot the Target at the Washington Square Mall overnight. The closures, however, are in Atlanta, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Oakland, California. Target CEO Brian Cornell issued a statement in support of the protesters. Cornell said the store prepared truckloads of first aid equipment and medicine, bottled water, and other essentials to provide necessary supplies to those in need. Back here at home, the Colts also issued a statement in support of the nationwide protests. The team issuing a statement saying, in part, quote, "Over the last several months, we've seen people across the country selflessly come together to help those in need during this pandemic. Sadly, other incidents we've seen, like the recent tragic event in Minnesota, remind us we still have a long way to go. We stand ready to help people come together and to reject hate, violence, and destruction, and to productively build great communities for all of us," end quote. The Pacers also issuing a statement saying, in part, quote, "We condemn racism and we fully support those who are peacefully coming forward in the names of justice and change. Our city and state are strong and resilient, and we must listen and respect each other," end quote. We want to turn now to the latest on COVID-19. The State Department of Health releasing new numbers on Sunday. 9 more deaths were reported, and that brings the total to 1,967. Health officials also confirmed 397 new cases, meaning more than 34,000 Hoosiers have tested positive for the virus since this started. That's just over a 13% positivity rate right now. Starting today, Marion County will move into the 3rd phase of the state's reopening plan. Restaurants can begin indoor dining at 50% capacity. Shopping malls can increase to 75% capacity. Public gatherings are capped at 50 people. Salons can reopen by appointment only, provided personal protective equipment is worn. Fitness centers can also reopen at 50% capacity or cap of 100 people. The sheriff in Flint, Michigan is making national headlines for his reaction to the Justice for George Floyd protests, how his unexpected gesture kept peace, and it sparked joy across the country. And there's good news for some Amazon employees hired during the coronavirus pandemic. Coming up, the details on the company's plan to make those positions permanent. Todd.
And Lauren, it was a terrific weekend with nothing but sunshine and temperatures in the 70s. As we won't go into the next couple days, some changes are going to start to happen. One of those is storms return, as you see off to our west, but we're also about to crank up the heat and humidity once again. We'll talk all about it coming up in your Storm Team 6 forecast. The time now is 4:40. You're watching Good Morning Indiana right here on RTV6.
Visit the Hiring Hoosiers job board.
Welcome back. The time right now is 4:43 on your Monday. It is June 1st, and we are keeping a close eye on traffic this morning as you're heading out on the roads. Keep in mind, we still have a curfew in effect in Marion County, only essential workers. So here is a look right now at I-65, a view near St. Clair Street. If you're heading into downtown, something you can know if you're an essential worker is the ramps that they had closed in the overnight hours appear to have been lifted about 2 o'clock this morning. So those are open at this hour. Everything looks to be traveling up to speed, but of course, we'll keep you posted. Well, protests over George Floyd's death south, reaching across the world now. In London, demonstrations moved through Trafalgar Square and towards the U.S. Embassy. The crowd was filled with people of all colors and police officers. Traffic was stopped in several places and protests were applauded by onlookers. Protests also took place in Canada, Germany, Italy, and Ireland. Across the country, many peaceful protests were overshadowed by the violence and the looting that took place afterwards. There was also reports of increased tensions between protesters and the police. But in Flint, Michigan, that's not the case. They marched to police headquarters where they demonstrated briefly, and then that's when this happened.
We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off, they laid the batons down. Yeah. I want to make this a parade, not a protest.
Well, that is Sheriff Chris Swanson. He talked and bumped fists with the protesters and then, in a show of solidarity, marched with the large crowd. This peaceful protest lasted several hours with no reports of violence.
And we can't forget, on all our police cars across the nation, it says protect and serve. Yes. Protect and serve. That means all people. That means all people deserve the same dignity, and you can't call out what's wrong and try to make it right. And that's the magic we saw tonight. And we marched, not 1 ounce of damage. Nobody's arrested. Nobody got hurt. This is the way it's supposed to be.
All right, as you walk out the door here this morning, you're walking out to comfortable temperatures. We're still in a really, really nice air mass across the area, one that features low humidity and will eventually feature lots of sunshine once the sun comes up. Here's a live look outside right now as you look from downtown off to the north, and not much to see right now, obviously, with the sun not up as of yet. But once that sun does come up, a little after 6 o'clock here this morning, it'll be a beautiful sunrise with the low humidity that we have out there as well. The temperatures this morning, nice and comfortable. We are sitting in the 40s and 50s, 47 in Crawfordsville and Greencastle, 54 in Indianapolis. It's 45 right now over in the Richmond area. And these temperatures may go down another degree or two here this morning, but overall, they're basically done falling, and they'll hold pretty steady this morning until the sun comes up. And then once the sun does come up, these temperatures will start to moderate very, very quickly. Storm Team 6 radar is nice and quiet. I know you see a little bit of green there on your screen. But that is just some feedback that is coming back to the radar site. There is no precipitation threat out there this morning, or for that matter, throughout the entire day today. Back off to our west, you do notice the clouds and some showers, and they're trying to spill their way back towards our area, but they're not really going to be all that successful here throughout the day today. You may see a little more in the way of cloud cover later on this afternoon, but as far as the rain goes, that's basically all going to start to fizzle away. So really no threat of rainfall today or tomorrow, although the big change tomorrow is going to be the heat that is going to start to build back in. But then you do notice the rain chances will increase Wednesday and Thursday. That will be in the form of some thunderstorms that'll be increasing across the area as we get into a very warm and tropical-like air mass. But today, look at your temperature trend going from about 59 degrees at 9 a.m. to 69 degrees by the noon hour. High temperatures today will be topping off in the mid-70s. Overnight tonight, the temperatures will drop back down into the 50s and 60s across the area. So not quite as cold or cool, I guess I should say, tomorrow morning as it is this morning. But as we progress throughout the week, look at the big temperature jump. Tomorrow we go all the way up to 88 degrees. Wednesday, potentially our first 90-degree temperature that we have seen so far this year. Wednesday, the storms are just pretty spotty in nature. But then as we get into Thursday and Friday, they'll be a little more numerous. And at this point, it looks like most of the storms should be out of here by the time we get to the weekend. But it will remain warm with high temperatures that'll be topping off, Lauren, in the mid-80s.
All right, Todd, thank you so much. Let's take a look right now at traffic. If you are heading out on the roads this morning, again, that curfew remains in effect unless you're an essential worker until 6 a.m. this morning. Here's a look right now at a quiet drive to downtown I-65 at West Street and MLK. This is one of the ramps that they had blocked off in the overnight hours due to the curfew, kind of keeping people out of the downtown streets. But as of about 2 a.m., it looks like, according to INDOT, they have reopened all the ramps into downtown. So something to keep in mind if you do have to head to work this morning. Everything here is quiet. We'll keep you updated if anything changes or if there are any crashes or delays to slow you down. Well, Amazon is offering permanent positions to about 125,000 of its temporary workers. That's about 70% of the employees that it hired during the coronavirus pandemic. The workers have been helping the company deal with increased demand demands from customers who are stuck at home. Amazon says the permanent positions will pay $15 an hour, and that will start in June. The pandemic is forcing UPS to add peak surcharges to certain U.S. domestic packages. For example, customers who have ordered oversized items from Amazon or Best Buy may be paying a premium. UPS says it's experiencing an unprecedented demand for shipping and higher costs due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Typically, peak surcharges only occur during busy online holiday shopping periods like Christmas. This is the first time in the e-commerce era that UPS has been compelled to add surcharges. The new rates took effect on Sunday, but the peak surcharges are subject to change, and the peak periods could be extended or they could be changed. Google is expanding its mental health screening tools as more people struggle during the coronavirus pandemic. According to the latest information from the Census Bureau, 1 in 3 Americans are showing signs of clinical depression or anxiety or both. Here's how the new online tool works. If you Google search anxiety, a panel will appear on the right side of your browser. It has information on disorders and a link to a self-assessment. After answering a few questions, you'll be given a score ranging from minimal to severe signs of anxiety. This is Google's third screening tool on mental health. History was made this weekend as 2 American astronauts successfully disembarked in SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule, and they entered the International Space Station. Up next, we're checking in with them as they settle into their new temporary home. And coming up, all new at 5 o'clock, we're taking a closer look at the damage left behind downtown after a weekend of peaceful protests got overshadowed by violence and crime. Those stories and more coming up here on Good Morning Indiana. Stick around.
Glad I stopped cleaning and started Swiffering.
Welcome back. The first American astronauts to launch from U.S. soil in nearly a decade. They are now on board the International Space Station. It's a major accomplishment for NASA and Elon Musk's SpaceX company. ABC's Gio Benitez has more on this historic moment that was made over the weekend.
NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are now aboard the International Space Station after docking with the orbiting laboratory Sunday morning.
We have Bob Behnken from SpaceX Demo 2 mission entering the International Space Station, followed by Doug Hurley.
Greeted by fellow American and Navy SEAL Chris Cassidy, who has been on the space station since April, and 2 Russian cosmonauts.
Obviously been our honor to be just a small part of this. We have to give credit to SpaceX, the Commercial Crew Program, and of course NASA. It's great to get the United States back in the crewed launch business.
Mission Control asking the men if they got any sleep during the 19-hour journey.
We did get probably a good 7 hours or so. The first night is always a little bit of a challenge, but the Dragon was a slick vehicle.
The mission making history on Saturday.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
As Behnken and Hurley became the first American astronauts to blast off into space from U.S. soil for the first time in nearly a decade.
Today we accomplished the first flight off the Florida coast in quite some time.
They are also the first crew to orbit the Earth in a spacecraft built by a private company, SpaceX, created by Elon Musk. The Crew Dragon capsule now with a new name.
We would like to welcome you aboard Capsule Endeavour. We both had our first flights on Shuttle Endeavour, and it just meant so much to us to carry on that name.
Behnken and Hurley will remain on the space station between 1 and 4 months. Gio Benitez, ABC News, Cape Canaveral.
Taken in the site.
All right, here's your 7-day planning forecast as we go throughout the week. The thing that'll jump out at you the most is going to be the temperatures, as we're really going to start to crank up the heat, and we'll start to crank up the humidity as well. And with the heat and humidity will come the chance of storms by the time we get to the middle half of the week. Today, though, is a great day at 76 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Tomorrow, mostly sunny as well. We'll jump up to 88 degrees for your high temperature. And then overall, once we get past today, those highs, they stay above normal even into the first weekend of June. We'll talk more about this forecast and have the latest news headlines and traffic as well coming up when Good Morning Indiana continues.